Let's talk about Akiya, the cheap, abandoned houses in Japan. Sounds like a dream, very cheap or even free housing, but could it turn into a nightmare? Let's talk about it. So in Japanese, Akiya just means an empty home. So that could be anything from something that's been abandoned for decades and is falling down to a rental mansion that had someone in it until just last week, but now it's vacant and ready for someone to move in. But generally when we say the word Akiya, we're talking about something that has been abandoned, that the owner doesn't want, and that no one else wants to buy either. They can be extremely cheap and in some cases even free, and this has caught the imagination of people all over the world. So all sorts of news outlets have been talking about Akiya. You can find countless YouTube channels now devoted to talking about Akiya, reconstructing Akiya, selling Akiya, and it's a bit of a craze at the moment. For a lot of people who are facing really high costs to buy property, looking at Akiya and thinking about living in some Japanese village in a home that only costs $3,000 seems like a dream. But these homes are cheap for a reason. Japanese people are not stupid. If no one wants to buy the thing, there's probably a decent reason for that. So let's talk about a few issues that might come up if you choose to buy an abandoned house in Japan. First is the condition of the house. You're going to buy it as is. It might not be inhabitable. You might need to do a lot of extensive renovation work to get it up to spec. And this can cost a lot of money unless you're able to do it yourself. Second huge problem is that the house might not be safe for earthquakes. Obviously Japan, we've got lots of natural disasters, and we saw this quite recently with the Noto earthquake last year, where, you know, there's a Noto peninsula, there's a lot of older houses there, and there was huge amounts of damage done by that earthquake because the houses were not earthquake resistant. More modern houses are built to more exacting standards in terms of earthquake resistance, and by buying an older home you might be removing yourself from that protection. Another serious issue is that you might not have permission to rebuild it. Some houses are built on land that's zoned as agricultural. You need to be registered as a farmer in order to rebuild on that land. Others could be in a place where it's no longer possible to build a house. My wife's parents' house is too close to a cliff, so that now it's not possible to rebuild on that land. When they built it, it was fine, but building codes have gotten stricter over time, so now we're not allowed to rebuild on that land, and so we can only work with the existing structure. Another issue is location. A lot of these houses are in the countryside, in places where the population is falling rapidly and they're losing access to infrastructure, they're losing access to shops, and it can be incredibly inconvenient to actually try and live in these areas. And the final issue is social. So moving to a village in Japan, moving to a rural area in Japan can be really difficult, even for Japanese people. So we've had lots of videos on YouTube recently with Japanese people who thought it might be a good idea to buy an Akiya and do something with it, but they run into all sorts of social problems, because when you live in a small community, there'll be obligations that you take on. So you might have social obligations where you're supposed to participate in various events and help with upkeep and clearing up things and things like that. You might also have financial obligations where you're obliged to contribute to certain things, and you might not know that going in when you first buy the Akiya. Now obviously not all Akiya are a terrible idea. I almost bought one myself once. A few years ago I was looking at the Akiya Bank, and I saw a place just down the road from where we live, probably about 40 minutes drive out of Sendai. It was an old farmhouse with a fair amount of land, beautiful location, and I thought, you know what, that would be a great place to just hang out on the weekend. My wife likes gardening, I like writing, it would be really nice. I called them up and someone else bought it that very morning. So that was as far as I got with buying an Akiya. But I think for some people there might be an option. So for example, if you can renovate it yourself, you can save a huge amount of money, a huge amount of hassle. You don't have to deal with contractors, and you can slowly do the place up while living in it. Also, if you already live in the area, you know the area, you know how things work, you're happy to live there, and you find a reasonably priced Akiya, that might also work out. But I think for a lot of people, it's not going to make sense. Even as a holiday home, if you actually calculate the true cost of purchase, the true cost of ownership of the building, you might find that it's easier just to stay in hotels instead. And that'll give you more flexibility. You can go to different places and so on. You're not tied down to that one location. So how about you? Are you interested in Akiya? Have you bought an Akiya? Please leave us a comment. Tell us about your experience. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.